There are 3 verses in the Bible about Jesus protecting us from God's wrath. One of it is from Romans 5:9, we shall be saved from wrath through Jesus Christ. The second one is 1 Thessalonians chapter 1 verse 10 says that Jesus delivered us from wrath to come. The third one is 1 Thessalonians 5:9. It says that God has not appointed us to wrath, but to obtain salvation. God's wrath is always against his enemies and never against his own children. Jesus came to save us from that wrath. However, some people have assumed that these verses are talking about the Great Tribulation in the Revelation. And because of that, they assume that followers of Christ should not be around when trouble starts. It is an understandable mistake. The tribulation is going to be pretty bad, not just for the rest of the world, but Christians as well. But in fact, there are 2 different periods mentioned in the Revelation, and this is where the confusion arises. A lot is said about the Great Tribulation, which is associated with the 7 angels who blow the 7 trumpets. But not so much is said about the wrath. A shorter period immediately after the Great Tribulation called the wrath. Christians are raptured after tribulation and just before the wrath. The wrath is punctuated by something the King James Version called the 7 angels carrying the 7 vials. Other translations use the word bowls. You can read about the wrath in chapter 15 and 16 of Revelation. The bowls are like acid and poured out on rebellious and disobedient earth. Revelation 15:1 says, I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled the wrath of God. And Revelation 15:7 says, one of the 4 beasts gave unto the 7 angels golden vials full of the wrath of God. There are similarities between what happens during tribulation and wrath. For example, the second trumpet of tribulation results into a third of life in the sea dying, whereas the second vial of God's wrath destroys all life in the sea. The 2 periods of time are quite different and the purpose of each is quite different. The tribulation represents God's chastening as he tests the loyalty of his true servants. He requires his children not to take the mark of the beast. Later, his wrath is poured on those who do take the mark of the beast. The wrath finishes in the famous Battle of Armageddon, where those of us who've been raptured, who've been celebrating in heaven, while the first vials of God's wrath were being poured out on the earth, swing into action at the pouring out of the last vial. We are the army that Jesus leads to the great battle of Armageddon. It may help you to remember that the trumpets are linked with the tribulation by noting that both words start with the letters TR, and the vials are linked with the wrath by thinking of 2 V's becoming 1 W. But the main lesson to get from all this is that God's children will endure tribulation, but will be spared from wrath if we are faithful when testing times come. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to this channel and join us in our efforts to preach the good news.